to identify the property that we supposedly trespassed. This is up to the court. Now, not the court, but the judges and those people to answer back. Well, it's not public property, but it's private, foreign, corporate property, is their only answer without lying or perjuring themselves.
I asked them times when they I kept asking them, what are you charging me with? Well, trespassing. I said, how can one of the public people be arrested for trespassing on public property? I have a right to be there. He said, you're on private property. And I was told that by 2 or 3 guys, and when they said it, especially this foos that arrested me, he said it with a grin, which tells me that they know that is not public property, that somebody else owns it, and just the sheeple are walking into the corral.
Well, yeah, let me give you an assessment on that. It is private property through tenant rights. Now, this all comes through what's known as certificates of participation in the county of Denver and every other county in the country. The bar, as in inns of the court, are basically the tenants. And although they've had public money with which to build their infrastructure, their courts, their jails, they're not letting anybody in on this note, that under their tenant rights, they are protected. That is private property, no different than a tenant in a hall. And the landlord does own the property. That's the public that owns the property, and they bought the buildings. But through certificates of participation, it is a rental agreement.
It's just a motel.
It is.
It's just a motel. It's just a Super 8. That's why they call it the inns of court.
Correct.
It explains it all right there.
Sort of has a ring of felony criminal conversion of public property to private use to me.
Yes, sir, it does. And when you consider that the judge that Nolte went before and all other judges, they draw their salaries from whom? The state or federal treasuries. This is embezzlement on the highest order.
Steve, I think it's felony criminal conversion of private property or public property to private interest.
It is. It is.
And the bar is a 501c3 corporation.
Sure they are. Non-profit.
Like a
Let
church.
me say this.
Better.
When I did my research last year on the ABA and the Colorado bar, we had determined that from the courts, the justice centers, they were producing X number of dollars. Well, when it finally got washed out under the ABA in New York City, when they filed their nonprofit revenues for the year, it was $237 million in washed money, and that's a far amount less than what was actually taken. But they were able to wash and clean and claim as untaxable $237 million in revenues that were generated through fines, fees, and bonds. And it all ended up at the Bank of England.
I think that's the Church of Satan, if I'm not too far wrong on what cult or religion they practice.
Oh, come on now. Don't pick on them just because they relate to darkness that way. There's plenty of it out there in outer space.
This is Steve B. I just wanted to let you know that Stephen Nolte made it very clear that he was a private natural man.
Yes, he did.
That he was private, that he was not one of them. He was just one of the private people. And that's so important because they're assuming that everyone's public and we're not. We're private.
Right. Exactly.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, in my eye, that explains exactly why he was treated the way that he was. Even if the others were arrested, it makes me beg the question, did they do so? Did they say that they were a private natural man before they were carted away?
Well, as soon as you say you're one of the people, those are private natural men and women. That's all people are private, period.
Jim, question for you. Did you tell the officers anything about you being a private natural man? Do you recall doing any of that?
We were talking about the public property. I said something to that effect. But I said so many things to these guys. They had no desire to hear anything I said. Like I said, that guy from the city, after he wrote me the ticket, I went through the whole spiel, and he went there. Yeah, that's great. Hey, that's great. Tell it walking, basically.
Yeah, he wasn't writing you a ticket. He was making you an offer to contract.
Exactly.
I've got it here. I'm going to send it back to him.
3-day rescission.
Yep. Send it back within 3 days. Case closed.
Right.
You might even find the Colorado statute equivalent that there's a statute in each state that says you can amend to any contract or whatever within 3 days.
Right.
Correct. And if you want to go all the way to federal, it's called TILA, which is Truth in Lending, and there's a 3-day rescission on all contracts. Regulation Z, I believe, if you want to take it federal, but state in this case has more power. And so
TILA has recently been ruled 3 years, or when the fraud is discovered, according to recent rulings from the Supreme Court.
Yep. Here's a couple of things I do want to share on this particular episode.
Wait, did I just hear you say that they changed the rescission to 3 years and that there's rulings on that?
Yes, you did.
My apologies, Steve. I profusely apologize. Please forgive me. I just, anybody here on the call having any information on that, I would be dearly encouraged and eager to hear more on that.
I do.
Thank you, Steve. I would love to hear more on that. Thank you.
You bet. Both Chris and I have the documents on it. Just go ahead and look up TILA, which is Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, and you'll find an extended period for rescission on all contracts when fraud has been detected.
Neil Garfield from Living Lies has had quite a few very expositive articles on it. I think it was Judge Alito that recently made the ruling. I could be wrong on which one of the judges it was, but they were very profound, and that right of rescission is certainly still valid, and it stands as law, and the banks are really nervous about it.
As they should be. It would void most of their contracts.
For mortgage closure is 3 years.
What you need, Senator? Yep. The number one consideration here, and I want to put it well at the top of the list, is jurisdiction. Not only consent, but jurisdiction lies right at the top of the heap. We have more than an arsenal full of evidence all the way from the Queen of England that she has no jurisdiction. The bars have no jurisdiction. The courts have no jurisdiction. And they've even said so in their own language. So the case about Jim needs to start out with a quorum nobis, which is the request or demand for their jurisdiction to have jurisdiction over you as a natural man. Or any other case. They really have no jurisdiction because of their foreign nature. They have no jurisdiction because of their criminal nature. All of that's been proven out. In other words, the judiciary all along has stated, well, there's 3 branches of government, judicial, executive, and legislative. Well, one thing the people never granted under the Constitution or otherwise was for a private foreign corporation to do their trade of criminality. We never gave them license to commit crimes on this land. Never. Not once. So their total lack of jurisdiction, and we know that all courts from the municipal level all the way up to the Supreme Court, they're all federal. And being federal makes them all foreign, private corporations, and which they have no jurisdiction. So this has got to be at the top of the letter, the demand that Jim will make to the court, that they must prove their jurisdiction, and obviously they don't have any.
Hello?
Secondly, I wanted to cover what I covered with a few folks last night, and this is going to help Jim out. And Jim, thanks for your service, buddy. You're just about to bankrupt the entire Denver County, and you can by one man. One man can bankrupt that whole thing because of the number of assaults that you had received, and here's why. Starting with the first officer. This is under their law, and it's case law, which they must abide by. It says no officer can acquire jurisdiction by deciding he has it. The officer, whether judicial or ministerial, decides at his own peril. That's Middleton versus Lowe. Again, in addition to this, the innocent individual who is harmed by an abuse of government authority. Now, keep in mind that this private corporation is presuming to have governmental authority, and they do not. They are not government authorities by any means. It says an abuse by a governmental authority is assured that he will be compensated for his injury. That was Owens versus City. Also, if one individual does not possess such a right over the conduct of another, no number of individuals, Jim, can possess such a right. All combinations thereof to affect such an object are injurious not only to the individuals particularly oppressed, but to the public at large. Now imagine this, the public at large has been injured because of what they did to you. This creates an emergency. Chris helped me out with this.
Was that from Owens v. City or Middleton v. Lowe? The last part.
Pardon me?
Was that last quote you were reading from, is that Owens v. City?
No, that's People versus Fisher. Excuse me, I didn't end my statement there. It was out of New York, Amjuris 501. So, what we have here is a public hazard being perpetrated by not only the alleged court, but the officers who are aiding and abetting the court in the commission of a crime against an individual.
If I might add,
you have them all right there.
Yeah, you're on the track there. What they're doing is they have the color of governmental authority and the appearance thereof. They try to couch themselves with the cloth of governmental authority, although they are truly private, foreign, corporate agents and actors acting outside scope, sphere, and color of law, which gives up all pretensive airs of immunity as private individuals, and acting without that scope, they become liable, culpable, and suitable for their malicious, bad faith acts under color of law.
You betcha. Now, here's the big one for you, Jim. And this will apply to most everyone's case. Number one, let me find it here. 15 USC-1, Chris. That's what I'm looking for. And basically what that is they put him under contract, presumed contract. They made an offer to contract. Well, every person who does that sort of thing under the guise of color of law is guilty by his action and commission of the crime. And it is a felony. It's also a federal felony for that sheriff to have put his arms on you. And it's going to cost him, being a corporate person, $100 million for that single act that he laid his hands on you. Another $100 million for him clasping handcuffs on you. Another $100 million for unlawful arrest. He didn't read you your rights. Another $100 million for kidnapping you. So the price goes on, and you can bury the city and county of Denver with what they don't like to hear is a commercial lien. What we call it is an action at law. And we do not have to have a court order. We do not have to have a court judgment in order to levy those liens. And those go right on to the officers themselves. And now we go back to the judge. She committed treason with a variety of different witnesses. Every witness, it's a $100 million lien against the judge. Have her try to get out of those.
How much was it per witness?
$100 million per offense, per occurrence, per person, under 15 U.S.C.-1. Have Denver answer to that. And what Denver's going to do is they're going to say, well, that's a different corporation. You're going to have to fight that. Well, all you have to do is take the lien and send it to the Pope, and it gets paid. And the judge is no more.
It gets paid?
You get paid $100 million per offense, per occurrence, per individual, and it becomes your BOE, as in a bill of exchange, which you're going to attach an oath of office to the back.
You know someone who's done that?
Yep. It's being done all over the place. Now, having received the money, that's a different matter. And this is what I need to make clear to folks when dealing with BOEs. Our intent is not to make money, because there's no money to be made using fiat Federal Reserve notes, correct? It's only a balance sheet that Federal Reserve use. What we're asking Reserve is to take the credits that the judge has and transfer them over to you. And she's now debited 100 million credits. It's a very easy step for bankers to do, and anyone not willing to do this is breaking the same 15 U.S.C.-1 and 2 and 3. And they all go to jail for 10 years each on each charge. That's federal law. That's their law. Keep in mind that we are private. They're public. When they take their oaths of office, they cross the line from private to public. All lawmakers are obligated to their own laws. We are not. The same thing applies to the $100 million. We're not interested in getting it. We just don't want them to have those credits anymore.
We don't want them. This is Jacob. We don't want them to have their jobs anymore either. By the way, Steve Curry, this is Jacob.
Yes, sir.
Will Jim want to do those affidavits of injury before he does the BOE?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
And thank you for bringing that up, Jacob, because that's a key element to the BOEs.
Yeah.
To get settlement. We've also discovered just of late ways of making settlement, and I'll explain that later. We'll get into that. But key to making a BOE work is to file what we call a reverse affidavit. Yeah. And before you get started on a BOE, you submit a reverse affidavit to these people. And you say, Jim would be saying, on the first day of April at such and such a time, I was getting on an elevator after a court hearing, and Sheriff, whatever his name was, Sheriff Deputy, detained me. Is this correct? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And it's a whole list of questions You must ask the questions, just like you were in a court case and you are the defense counsel or the prosecuting attorney. Yes or no, please. Just answer the question. So Jim would put together a series of questions relating to the incidents, the events that happened. And he asked the questions, and all questions demand an answer. Now, in all cases, these interrogatories, as we call them, are unanswerable by the opponent because all of their answers would be indictable upon them. Guess what you can't do as a public official? You can't plead the fifth. Believe it or not, you cannot plead the fifth when you're asked certain questions about a certain event without, and if you don't answer them, that's perjury. It's called acquiescence and silence. You give these people 20 days, or you can give them 10, whatever you want. You have 10 days to respond to these interrogatories. If you do not, a summary judgment will be issued against you for X number of dollars. Out of court. It's non-judicial. The reason all of this is non-judicial, folks, is imagine this. One judge trying another. They can't do it under their own corporate charters, can they? Under ABA Rule 8, no conflict of interest is allowed. No misrepresentation is allowed. No deceit or fraud is allowed. So you take it to them with these interrogatories, challenge their jurisdiction. Jim, on the question of trespass, did you, sir, issue me a citation for trespass? Yes or no? Please explain, sir, onto whose property did I trespass? And explain in detail. Did you cite me for obstruction of an officer? Yes or no? You, sir, are you an officer of the court? Are you an elected officer of Denver and City County Sheriff's Department? Yes or no? Are you a private contractor, sir? Yes or no? With whom do you contract, sir? Yes or no? Or please detail. Please give your answer in detail. So what we're getting at is you give them an opportunity to rebut, argue, or protest. You give them 10 days. And if they do not, they go into acquiescence and silence, which is, under all commercial law, an agreement and acceptance of your allegations. And you've got them. And then you file your BOE. Okay, go ahead. I'll yield for a second.
Yes, I just wanted to find out, when you do the reverse affidavit, wouldn't it be better when you ask the question to give your stipulated answer and let them rebut your stipulated answer?
Well, you already know the answer to the question you're going to ask, don't you? And this is just giving them an opportunity to assess for themselves what actually went on. And you can have X number of witnesses signing off on your reverse affidavit before you send it in. I do not recommend anymore having a notary public because all you're doing is giving the corporate your consent to have purview over your information. There are other ways and avenues to direct your affidavit. In other words, when you close out your affidavit, you would say, private patent and estate of you, house of Jim, and you say all rights reserved, status quo ante bellum, which means before all contracts. And so basically you lay it out that you are a natural man, and as a natural man you have your character, honor, oath, and so on. Your word is in your signature. No other signature, no corporate signature or seal is required. takes this whole function of the notary and just shoves it off to the side. What we're doing is doing an end around the courts. We're doing an end around the bonding people. We're doing an end around the insurance people as well. And we go straight to the CEO of the corporation, that being the sheriff of the county. He's one. The second one is the district governor in Colorado. That's Hickenlooper. The third would be the U.S. Postmaster General, and then all the way to the president of the corporation, which would be Barack Obama. And then you take a final paper and you issue it with the Pope, the Vatican, the legal counsel for the Vatican. By the time you reach the Vatican, your bill is going to be paid because of one thing. They don't want any bad blood. In other words,
is this in theory, or do we know someone at all who has actually accomplished that?
We are doing it as we speak, and it works really, really well. All a BOE is a public notice to all offending parties. You've not only been offended by the city cop, but the county cop, the judge, so-called judge. She's nothing more than an executive administrator for the corporation. You're putting the governor on notice. You're putting the president on notice, the postmaster for mail fraud. If you get a document in the mail, Jim, telling you that your arraignment hearing is coming up, that is mail fraud, because they're putting their presumption and their offer to contract in the mail, which is the fluid canal, if you would, between public and private. It's the only open avenue that we're finding to and from the corporation is the postal service.
Well, what I had on the ticket, they said, you're supposed to appear May 1st is what they had. Okay. Of course, I didn't sign that. And then on the bond, they have me appearing next Wednesday.
Well, lucky you. Now you've got a divergence in court docketing, and I think Chris has got something on that. They cannot give you two different notices. If they do, everything goes out the window. It's all fraud.
They might have did that on accident.
Or on purpose.
Exactly, that's what I meant. You know what I meant.
Yeah, say that again?
It was an honest mistake to just throw the case out in case they didn't miss it.
That'd be James 1:8, double-minded persons of unsound mind and dealers in deceit.
Yeah, but they use the deceit to make it look like an honest mistake.
There's no such thing. They're presumed and assumed to know the law. And if they don't, they're incompetent. They shouldn't be in their office.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's also called divergent contracting, which is deception. It's a form of deception. Courts use this all the time. They'll set somebody up and say, well, your court hearing is such and such, and they'll set another one before that date. And if you don't show up to the first one without having been notified, then they can catch you that way. And they've done this over a couple of centuries.
Can I jump
in? Careful of those. Please.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Pat in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I don't know if you've discussed this or not, but what about filing an affidavit of revocation of signature for good cause, understanding that all of this is done in fraud and that you become aware of the nature of the fraud and that you've been required to sign under duress and coercion, and that you understand that this should be a revocation, good cause revocation procedure.
It's an excellent idea. Excellent.
Well, the ticket
I have one such if you're interested in it.
I have a copy of such an affidavit that was used up in Alaska just recently. I believe it was January 30th of this year. And I could forward a copy of that. I took a screen clip, and I could forward a copy of that to Randy.
And along with that affidavit, then there's public notice in the newspaper that supports the filing. It's basically the same thing, affidavit of revocation for good cause, stating whom it may concern to the state up. And then you would plug your own state in on that particular case.
Other assistive language that might be incorporated in that document reasonably would be of rescission to it's really kind of humorous when you start thinking about these things. Replevin is another way of taking back your private property, and your biometric testamentary evidence is your private property if it was elicited or seduced from you under fear of threat, duress, coercion. Then they have unlawfully seized your private property, trespassed on your rights, and under fear of pain, penalty, or death or loss of liberty, they have coerced you into giving it up against your will.
And who is speaking now?
Say again?
Who is speaking now?
Oh, this is Chris near Las Vegas.
Chris. Is it possible to get, it sounded like you were reading from something, is it possible to get a copy of that?
Oh, that's just off the top of my head.
Oh, wow. Right.
He reads off the top of his head all the time.
I have a similar revocation and rescission, and I'd love to compare notes, as it were.
Well, let Randy know, and she'll forward your information to me. That way we don't have to divulge each other's private information over the telephone calls, which could have trolls in the neighborhood, so it would be safe for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of trolls, have we pretty much covered the case from yesterday?
I think so, unless somebody had a new comment or a question about it.
Okay.
Everybody now has the video. I just sent that.
Awesome.
They have a link to my Dropbox, so you got to get it from there because it's too big to email.
Okay. Well, just to wrap that whole incident up yesterday in Coffelt, if you're still on, if you want to say a few
I have a
things.
question.
Okay.
Does this stuff mostly apply to, like, people that have been, like, put in it or have gotten cases put against them? Because, like, I've never even been in a courtroom. I guess I'm just confused because most of the time whenever you guys are talking about it, I feel like none of it applies to me because I've never had to do any court proceeding stuff, I guess.
It does apply to you, and what we're trying to do nationwide and worldwide is to alert people to certain variables of their rights that they have at their disposal immediately should they be accosted by any government agent, any law enforcement people. And it really comes from the private side that we were talking about earlier. If you can flash the officer a note saying, I am a sovereign, I am an American national, I am a man on the land, you have no authority or jurisdiction, whether you think so or not, to detain me in any way. And go ahead.
His point is well taken. However, it's kind of like motorcycle riders. There are those who have either crashed or eventually will crash, they say. And some people are able to amble blindly through life and never having to be introduced to the court system's processing, like a wearing lender. And that's very fortuitous. However, being forewarned and forearmed is a better plan. Being prepared to deal with the eventuality that you likely will be subjected to some sort of government terroristic abuse rather than being immune from it by consequence of good fortune.
Very well stated.
So basically what you said is,
rape.
So basically what you said is it's like me having a rifle and buying a ton of ammo?
Yep.
Okay. That would have been easier.
Oh, okay. Forewarned is forearmed. How's that?
Yeah.
And just to state a larger case, the judiciary in our country has enslaved you as well as it's enslaved everyone else. And you need to know how they've done that, the history of it. And this is probably an excellent segue here to present one of the better papers, short papers I've ever read, and it comes from our good friend up in Alaska, Judge Anna. Mm-hmm. And I sent that out to Randy and to a host of different people. But it was a public notice, a public demand, and it was basically a short capsulized history of the United States, the judiciary, the government, and all of that. A wonderful read. It takes you, 10 minutes to read or less. And she has very well and very articulately and eloquently given us the history in a vitamin tablet. And what she's promoting here is that every one of us is a judge. What she's promoting is that we are the court, we are the jury. We've just been deceived into thinking that these corporate invaders from the Crown Templar have any kind of jurisdiction over us. They do not. We are the jury. We are the court. There are case laws that say the judge is not the court. Mr. Byfield has uncovered some very interesting documents. And Stephen, if you wanted to comment on 21 USC that you uncovered, that would be great. But basically, it pulls the carpet out from under the judiciary entirely. They've never had jurisdiction. They've never been granted the power over the man or woman, the American national, or any other sovereign. So this is all in Judge Anna's work. Please do take a look at it. What this is going to do is take you into looking into the Jade Helm coming up. And I hope Mr. Waters is still on, because we have a little different view of what Jade Helm is all about. It is my assessment, and the assessment of others, is that this military exercise is geared to taking down the bar, taking care of our public officials, our corrupt public officials, and judges and all of that. I absolutely am 100% convinced that these military maneuvers in the Southwest, these men and women in uniform are coming to protect us against them. Think about it for a minute. The FEMA camps that have been set up, there's only so many cells, so many beds, and it's just about a million beds so far. How many folks are in the United States? 350 million. How many bar members do we have? 1.2 million. Think about it for a minute. We have some very good, solid people in these agencies that have been checking out my work, checking out everyone else's work. They are working for us, folks. So let me distill or dispense or calm everybody's nerves here about Jade Helm. And let me say this, that it is an international effort to take down the cabal. From China, we're seeing that they're arresting judges and lawyers and prosecutors and corrupt policemen. In Iran, they just executed a Rothschild banker. In Russia, Mr. Putin just put out an arrest warrant for Mr. George Soros, one of the creators, constructors of the cabal here in the United States. These are all mafia people that must go down. We are allied with a very good, solid bunch of people at the top, including our Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you will read Anna's recent document, her public notice, you'll find that the Joint Chiefs of Staff are at the controls of Jade Helm. And this operation is to take down the bad guys. I want to raise my hands and go, wow, this is really cool. This is nothing we have to fear. Now, there's a lot of fear-mongering going on from all levels. We just need to calm down and take another look at the equation. Look at what's in the ingredients. Look at what makes up this equation. The only thing that makes sense to me, and I can confirm this through a number of different sources, is that the special forces, the Green Beret, the SEALs, Army Rangers, and all of that, these are very well-trained individuals who have all taken oaths just like I did. They took the same oaths as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What oath is that? To protect, defend, and support the U.S. Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to the best of their ability. So help them God. So we have everything to look forward to starting July 15th, running for 2 months into September. So that is the good news I want to report. And trust me, that this really makes more sense than the other way around. Any combination of troops, okay, we have Russian troops. Who are the Russian troops commanded by? Mr. Putin. Who are the Chinese troops commanded by? The good folks of China, who, by the way, have orchestrated and implemented already the new, very fluid, asset-based world currency. Who are they taking on? They're taking on the IMF, the Vatican, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is dead. Trust me.
How can they take on the Vatican when the Vatican owns all corporations and even China is itself a corporation?
China is a good corporation as well as those corporations in Russia.
But all of those corporations are underneath the Vatican. The Vatican is the hub.
They are not, sir. Nope.
I'd love to see proof of that.
I have that proof, and I'd be glad to share it with you. Number one, just look at the dynamics. Look at the political construction that we have worldwide right now. We have the BRICS Association, which is not IMF, which is not Vatican. The BRICS is the Russians and China.
I think perhaps you may be misunderstanding when I say Vatican. I'm not referring to the crown. I mean the Vatican City-State.
Yep, Vatican City-State, same thing. They basically had, now you have to go back and read Anna's work because she pretty much diagrams the whole thing. That agreement that the Vatican made with Britain to control America basically fell flat through fraud, 100 some years ago. All of this has come to a head. If you guys have been following what's going on in London, where the Queen has been indicted, arrest warrants have been made for her because of her defiling her oath of office, which takes on the bar.
I don't see her in jail. I don't see her dethroned.
Oh, I do. I do.
No, I'm saying I've not seen any. I'm not saying I don't visualize it. I'm saying, I'd love to see that. As an Irishman, if nothing else, every Irishman I've ever met would love to see that. But that's just off the bat. Never mind the rest of the story. What I'm saying is I've not seen any evidence that that's to occur.
Did you follow the case that just wrapped up? I think it was almost a 10-year case where the jury just awarded the, he was actually the plaintiff in the case, and they agreed with his assessments and all of his evidence to show that the Queen has been operating without an oath since 1953.
I have seen that. And while I fully agree with you that logically speaking and lawfully speaking should take her out, I don't see the structure standing up to the head of its structure and saying, we're going to go fight the guy that signs our paycheck. I don't see that happening.
There is some pretty strong indication that the queen is a pretender to the throne. She's
a pretender genealogically, and she's a pretender by law. So you're right on both points there.
She's from the house of Benton, not Windsor. Windsor is an adopted name or assumed pseudonym, and therefore she has no right or title to the throne by blood, only by fraud. And that has recently been coming out, of course, with some of the debacles and the truth being cast in the form of sunshine on the debauchery, the depravity, the child pedophilia occurring within the alleged royal house in England, along with Jimmy, what's his name, and some of the other perverts in that group. It's not very surprising to find that the wool is coming off the costume of the wolves.
Another thing related to London, if you're familiar with the Treaty of Lisbon, just a couple of years back, 2012, I believe it was, the financial headquarters for the, let's say, the Vatican and all their IMF stuff have been moved to Brussels. And London is no longer the headquarters for the private banking cartel. But in this move, which involved a number of different Rothschild people, they've caught these people in transit. And when we say that, we talk about the Iranian execution of a Rothschild banker just the other day. We talk about J. Paul Getty, who was found dead in his L.A. mansion under. They're not even disclosing how he was murdered. Rothschilds are under attack right now from people that have had absolutely enough of the IMF, enough of the Federal Reserve, enough. We've had bankers throwing themselves off bridges and buildings and shooting themselves in unprecedented rates. They know that they are going to jail and they just don't want to go there. Their house of cards is gone. And it's gone thanks to a very strong consortium of true-blooded people, individuals who have really put themselves out on the line to get this done. And I'm just proud to see it happen. I'm very happy to see it happen. Think about this. What we've uncovered here in the United States in the CRIS documents, which was the self-diagramming, the program called CRIS. It is between the courts, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve. We have substantial documents to show that all of this has been orchestrated to fleece and defraud the American public. All of this is coming to a head. All of it's coming out public. I just sent out a video of Miss Sherry James the other day. She's a former IRS agent, and she is now a whistleblower. She was giving a conference at a Sheraton Inn, of all places, and the room was pretty well packed. And she was one of the top recruits for the IRS out of school. Very, very bright young lady. And she described in detail how the IRS, the courts, and the Federal Reserve work together. And she made a public announcement that the Federal Reserve was a private foreign corporation. And she's not being touched. There's no way these people are going to touch her. She's got so much dirt on them, and she's glad to share it. And all of this needs to be public. Everybody needs to know about it. This is what we call public presentment, no different than the stockades of early years. Now we have the Internet, which is the people's way to publish and present. And thanks to folks like Randy, who puts herself out there, and others around the country to make this information known. That is our enforcement. Everybody talks about having enforcement for one thing or another. That's our enforcement. Public humiliation. Public notice. We have lawyers and judges burning their bar cards. We have judges that were bar members that they've had enough of that crap. We have the Goldwater Institute, who filed a major class action suit against every state bar across the country for being frauds, for being union shops, for being members of the Communist Party, for being unconstitutional. Everywhere I look, the energy is on, and we've all gotten our direction. We know who the bad guys are, and we're pointing them out. Bankers, lawyers, judges, you name it. And this is what pleased me the most yesterday, is that Denver got one of their notices, the Denver court system. They were put on notice yesterday by some very stalwart individuals. And I'm very, very, very proud of those guys. And I'm very proud of Jim. He took a beating. But there is remedy in all of this. And it's all going to be within our courts. We've taken back our courts. Not physically so much as yet, but that's only a matter of time. We've stripped them of their jurisdiction. We put them on notice that we say no. No more. No more consent. Not a court in the country can operate without your consent, written, implied, expressed, or otherwise. They really like your written consent. But when people like Jim stand up and say, yeah, I'll sign it, but under duress or without prejudice, these people will go broke. And they'll leave. And a good friend of mine has a good plan in loading up old oil tankers with these vermin and putting a quarter tank of gas in the tank and setting them back out to sea where they can operate with other predators. That's where they like to ply their trade. Have at it. But not here. Not on our land. Not anymore.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Yeah, this is Paul Coxvick. Hey, Chris and gang. I have a situation, and maybe we can get together offline. Chris, I have your info. It has to do with an inheritance from my father, and it was tied up in litigation. Had to do with the fund that was set up for merchant marines during World War II when Norway was occupied. And I was tipped off about it, and Parliament stepped in and put up a sum of money in 1972. My father still didn't get paid. I put a notice of claim in, and I'm looking for direction for the best way to go from here. If anybody could help me out. It's a bad faith insurance claim on pension and back pay.
Well, it sounds like you've got some real issues there. Does you hear me?
The corporation was set up in New York State because Norway was occupied, and for insurance purposes, they had to insure the vessels under half of them under Britain and half of them under the United States.
Well, it's certainly things that you can look at. Of course, anytime you get into probate, we must consider that the word probate may likely be spelled Probait, and that the estate is the bait that the lawyers are interested in accessing under their schemes of adjudicating the administration of the testamentary rights of the estate holder for the will. And
right.
Where you're talking about accessing some rights and benefits that your father had earned with his blood, sweat, and tears, being put on the line to defend others in other countries that he has a right and title to. So it seems like probably locating the correct parties to access that might be the key. Of course, the documentation to prove his lawful right, title, and interest to be a party to have access to those funds is preemptory in this sort of a situation. And
yeah, I have all that documentation. Actually, my mother
sure you
put
did.
in a. I'm sorry?
I was sure you did. Of course, finding the correct group, party, foundation, or perhaps merchant marine fiduciary would be critical to put your plight and petition into the proper location to have it given the credibility and the honor that is due it. So, I think you know how to get hold of Randy, and Randy knows how to get hold of me. You said you know my information already, so, Steve is also very astute on these matters, and I think we're both veterans, and we certainly admire your father's service that he gave for the country that he loved so much and for the world.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. All of it's on the internet. You can look up Norcher Ship Secret Fund. The information's on there. And then there's another story about my father when his ship was sunk off of Cape Hatteras. He was in a lifeboat for a while. And that story's on the internet too. But I have all that information. Perhaps I can send it to you. Maybe Steve, and between the three of us, we can brainstorm.
It is indeed a possibility.
If you send me an email, I'll forward it out to these guys. If you send it to me, include your phone number, and I'll forward it out to both of them.
All right.
And email.
Support at 42action.org.
Right.
Hello?
I get the notices from you about the call, so that would be the one you're talking about, right, Randy?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Same one. Just hit reply and put your info in there and tell me, just put it in there that you want to be in touch with Steve and Chris, and I'll forward it.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
It's a very interesting case.
Oh, yeah. I haven't told you the half of it.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the second half.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay. Very good.
Thanks, gentlemen.
And I think, was that Keith that I heard? Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, I went on to your website, and the information, the documents that's on that website, again, it's not user friendly. You can't make any changes to the documents, for your own personal use.
Well, the documents that we have up there, we've tried to make some user-friendly templates. If you're familiar with changing PDF, say to Word or to Pages or something like that, you can get that done. Oftentimes what you can do is, let's say it's a PDF document, you just copy and paste and then post it to your Word or Pages, and then you'll get a workable document that way.
Okay, and I was looking for some samples of the affidavits that you have to do to send in, but I don't see any samples of how to correctly fill out any of those documents on there. Do you have those?
Oh, yeah. They should be up there and running. My good friend, Mr. Rice, is facilitating all of that. If you have any questions about a particular document, just send us an email. And
I did. I sent an email. About a week ago. I haven't gotten a response yet.
Okay. What's the email? What's your email?
My email is poquito@hotmail.com.
I don't recognize it, but I'll.
I gave him the West Slope one, Steve. CO West.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you try just sending a test with your email to CL West Slope @gmail.com. And Mr. Rice can get that to me, and we can open up a dialogue that way.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Did you have a specific document besides the affidavit or the BOE or?
No, well, I wanted to see how the BOE was supposed to be filled in, because I noticed that on the top it has some numbers that have to go there. I wanted to know, have an idea as to what kind of numbers go up there, and in the affidavit I needed to have some idea of what needs to be put in the affidavit and where those documents need to be sent to.
Okay. Let me just touch on those very briefly for everyone listening. You can create your own bill of exchange, and it's also called a promissory note. If you go to our website, there's a page there. It's called Bill of Exchange Library, and it's a vast resource of places you can go on the internet to find promissory note forms or bill of exchange forms. And you can actually go on the internet, find a BOE, fill it out, download it. There's a charge, I think, on a few of them for doing that, but that's another way. And this takes care of how to make one. The affidavit is very simple. What it's called is an affidavit of truth and injury. Basically, you state the facts of your case, say in one page. On the second page, you state the injuries that you've received. And the third page would be the remedies that you seek. The fourth page would be the laws that apply to the perpetrator of those injuries. And we have all sorts of case law built in our affidavits, ranging from USC Title 18 and 22, 21, 28, 42. 42 is an awfully good one. And 15 USC. 15 USC is a multi-pronged tool against all contracts. Look up 15 USC-1 and 2 and 3 on the internet, and you're going to get what I'm talking about. Every person that's involved in any contract that obstructs your commerce, you can charge them $100 million if a corporation, $1 million if another person. So, again, the affidavits are quite simple. You could do it all in 4 pages. You state the facts of the case, state your injuries, state the remedies that you're seeking, and then state either case law or constitutional law or natural law, and you wrap it up in a salutation, basically as in an oath and a testament, saying that everything you've said is true and that you stand behind your oath and your honor and your word, that you are telling the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Sign it. Put an oath of office, copy an oath of office, let's say, on the back of a BOE. It becomes legal tender. Legal tender under U.S. law, and all of those are quoted. And if you need some help on those, let me know. But most of our documents have those in them already. I think we had a third question there, did we not? Formatting, processing is very easy. You simply make a black and white copy of your BOE along with your affidavit of truth and injury. You date everything, and you put a cover letter on it to the bank, and then you make a return receipt or confirmation of receipt, have the banker sign that, so you have proof that you went to the bank, get a business card from the president or manager. If not making a personal drop, you put it in the mail, certified mail, and they are signing for the receipt. What is so key about bills of exchange is that they are accepted upon delivery as a regular Federal Reserve note. You hand that guy a $5 bill, he accepts it, the deal is done. BOEs are the same thing. If a banker refuses them, then he is violating the law, and then you charge him with a 15 USC, and you say, well, sir, if you do not accept this, this is all legal tender under U.S. law and international law, you're breaking the law, sir, and you're going to go to jail for 10 years. We don't want to do that to you. What we'd like to do instead is give you incentive to help us, help me find this remedy. And so you give him half of the $100 million. It's more money than they've ever seen in their lifetimes. The problem with the bankers is that they're not familiar with these things, so they put them over to their legal department, which is the bar. Bar members are going to refuse it, but there you have, when they refuse it, you get them to write out, well, we decided not to take up your offer. They're violating the law right there in several different ways. The BOEs are constructed as two-party instruments. There's only two secured parties here, you as the injured party and the banker as the assign. No third party, no unsecured third party can intervene upon that legal tender. This takes the courts completely out of it. The banker is obliged to tender this document as he would any other bad check, and he's supposed to return to you your remedies, and he's going to charge the person that wrote the bad check, aka the bad oath of office, he's going to charge him for writing a bad check. The banker has several ways to operate. He can put a commercial lien or an action at law against the oath signer or oath giver. He can tender that bill to the insurance company that floated the surety to begin with. This would be folks like Travelers or Hartford Insurance or something like that. He can also take it to the International Settlement Bank in Puerto Rico. Bankers know all about that. They just don't want you to know it. Again, there's no money being exchanged. It's only a matter of credit and debit swaps. You're going to be credited $50 million. The banker's going to get credited $50 million. And the judge or the oath taker or giver, they're going to be debited that amount. With a debit like that, a judge or the violator of the oath of office, you'll never be able to get another loan until the full and complete debt has been taken care of. This is what we're doing with the BOEs.
Yes, you'd also mentioned a bypass method by going through the Secretary of State, I believe it was, and the Vatican.
Yeah, you can do that too. File a copy with the state, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, and then send a copy to the legal department at the Vatican. We have several in transit right now.
Okay, are those addresses on your site?
No, I didn't put the addresses for the Vatican on the site, but that's a good idea. This is all fairly new, so I'll be sure to get those posted.
Okay.
Did you give out your website? I'm sure you did, but if you want to give it again, that'd be great, Steve.
Oh, sure, you bet. It's Foursquare Doctrine .wordpress.com, and it's the number 4 to start out with. 4 Doctrine, DOCTRINE. Foursquare Doctrine. I always get it confused.
I thought it was Four Corners.
Four Corners Doctrine. Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a long day. Four Corner Doctrine. Four Corners Doctrine. I'm confusing everybody. fourcornersdoctrine.wordpress.com. So I'll say it one more time. Thank you, Randy. fourcornersdoctrine.wordpress.com. And let me touch on what Four Corners is all about. Four Corners is your establishment of your private property. It involves your patent. It involves your estate. Basically, think of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. We all meet at the Four Corners. We're all pretty much rectangular or square out here in the West. These are states. What we're doing with the Four Corner Doctrine is to establish our state as a private, natural, individual, American national, man or woman on the land with all the rights you could ever imagine. We have more rights than any of those jokers who ever wrote the laws. What we establish within the Four Corners are our perimeter boundaries, meaning we only grant jurisdiction where we want to. We only grant contracts to jurisdiction where we want to. We identify jurisdiction for what it is. Juris, again, is just the practice of law, the understanding of law, jurisprudence, and all of that sort of thing. Diction is either the written or spoken language of the law. What we do not allow within our state are foreign jurisdictions. We do not allow those jurisdictions to come at us with contracts of presumption, offers to contract. Those are all outside our perimeter, and we're stating our boundaries. We're establishing our perimeters. And we also claim injury. Only a man, a natural man, natural woman, can be injured. Corporations and collectives and all of that cannot be injured. One of the major corner posts of the Four Corners is consent. We do not grant consent to anyone that we don't want to. In the middle of this Foursquare doctrine, we have contracts. And those include oaths of office. Those include all contracts that are either dubious or that we can or cannot or choose not to get involved in. There's a line that's a horizontal line that goes through the center of this state, and in the lower half we are the private, and the upper half is public. We identify admiralty in the upper. We identify military tribunals in the upper. Anything having to do with the oath of office, that's the transition point from private to public. We bring folks that have made themselves public back in line by their oaths of office. We strip them of their jurisdiction. We strip them of any kind of immunity that they may have thought they had. We strip them of all their presumptions, as in colors of law. We recognize those immediately, and we say, nope, you're in direct opposition to our consent. We do not contract. Our injuries can all go to contract, but only the contracts that we choose, like the BOEs. We choose to execute a BOE because we've been injured. And the BOEs are 110% lawful. There's nothing wrong with them at all. If there was something wrong with a bill of exchange, there would be definitely something wrong with filing oaths of office. Both are commercial instruments. Both have been recognized for a couple of centuries. What we do, again, with our BOEs, we are pulling a BOE out of circulation, out of commerce, where it had already been given a monetary value. We're attaching it back to our bill of exchange, along with our affidavit of truth and injury, resubmitting it to Commerce through the banks, through the Federal Reserve, if that's the game. Actually, we like to go directly to the organic U.S. Treasury for validation, or to the Vatican. We are foreclosing on the oath of office, no differently than a promissory note would be foreclosed on by a banker who didn't get paid for the mortgage payments. And they send the sheriff out to evict the people. What we're asking the sheriffs to do is go evict the judge who defiled his or her oath of office. Sheriffs aren't so inclined because they're really part of their corporation. But yet they are the only elected private individuals that we can get to. So we incentivize them by offering them a tax-free way to conduct their business. They no longer have to rely on the corporate welfare system as in a budget or taxpayer money. All they have to do is go out and arrest one judge, and they've got $50 million in their pocket, or whatever we decide to give them. But again, it's not about making money, folks. It's not. It's really, no way. Think of it in a constitutional form. Our Constitution and the Bill of Rights is nothing more than prohibitions and constraints. We're applying the same constraints and prohibitions against lawbreakers. We're holding them accountable. They've infringed upon our rights. We as natural, law-abiding, peaceful, incorporable people have a right to remedy for all injuries. This is our form of remedy, which does not include a judicial judgment. We know the courts are corrupt, and until they all turn back into Article 3 courts, let's go around them. There's nothing in the law that says we have to deal with the courts. By the way, if you've ever gotten a judgment from a court, what's it worth? Nothing. Courts can't enforce it. Sheriffs won't. So why even deal with the courts at all? And the more information we can get out there to the more people, we're going to bankrupt the courts. We're going to bankrupt their corporation.
Say that part again, Steve.
Pardon me?
I don't mean to interrupt, but you said, has a court ever collected on a judgment for you? Is that how you're saying it?
I am. Well, look at what court judgments are. They're just paper, and they can't enforce them. I know of multiple people who've got good judgments from courts in the millions of dollars, but they can't collect on them. The courts won't enforce them.
Okay, so you're saying the people getting paid, not somebody suing you in court and they get a judgment against you. They just throw a lien on your house or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And again, the lien is non-judicial, isn't it? What the court does is turn it over to the bank, and the bank does the lien if they're so minded. We've just got to convince the bankers that this is really good for their business, and it is. Number one, if bankers would just sit back and look at the expense that these lawyers have cost them with all their litigation stuff, trying to repossess these homes, for instance. Wouldn't it be better just to drop that whole procedure and do an end around the courts and go do it commercially? Another attribute to the BOEs, and thank you, it reminded me to talk about this. Oaths of office are becoming, and they will be, the number one law enforcement tool to eradicate corruption from all of our public offices and to return all of our public offices back to the organic government offices that we thought and have been deceived to believe them to be. I'd love to see the FBI start to use these against criminals. It would just shut them down like nobody's business. Let me give you an example. The Securities and Exchange Commission busted, and the FBI, they busted Mr. Sheldon Silver up in New York. He was a bar member who has public office. He's the General House of Representatives, I believe, for the state of New York. And they busted him for taking $4 million a graft. Well, we know that he took more than that. And the SEC and all these people, they're going to spend far more than $4 million to get the $4 million back. And where does the money go that they get? It goes right back into the Department of Justice. It doesn't go to the people that got hurt by Mr. Sheldon Silver's activities, does it? With BOEs, there's an injured party attached. The injured party gets paid. We all know that there's rewards out there for injured party that the DOJ says, oh yeah, we'll pay you 30% on the dollar, and we take the rest, and it goes right back into the bar. This is all criminal as well, isn't it? It's called racketeering. Mm-hmm. So the SEC is as guilty as Sheldon Silver, and the DOJ is as guilty as Sheldon Silver. But not with a BOE.
You know, Steve, the DOJ with this administration is being used as an extortion racketeering Chicago mob shakedown operation, explicitly of big banks and other businesses that they find easy targets, and of course they do what they call deferred settlement agreements, whereby they settle for peanuts for the trillions, or if not quadrillions of dollars they've looted from the American people, and they line their pockets with a few millions or a few billions while they give them a license to steal even more quadrillions.
Yes, sir. I was going to throw out a number earlier, and thanks, Chris, for reminding me. This Sherry James, this wonderful IRS whistleblower, she made the remark, she says, the IRS takes $36 million an hour from the American people. $36 million an hour.
Disgusting.
Unretrievable, and she makes the point that none of this goes for our government offices. None of it goes for infrastructure. None of it, not a dime. It all goes to the corporation, the foreign corporation, in the way of tribute back to Crown Templar, back to the Vatican. $36 million an hour.
Well, you got to think of how much money is going towards the wars, too.
Well, those pay for the wars, don't you know? It's the corporation that perpetuates these wars, and they love it.
Oh, so the $37 million an hour is with the wars attached?
Well, it fronts the wars, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't even know about it. And we don't even know that the IRS doesn't collect any money for our government. We know that they're a private foreign corporation with their headquarters in Puerto Rico with their own Dun and Bradstreet number. And she admits it right there in the film. And she shows her badge and what her ID that she used to use, a copy of it anyway, where she could go and flash her badge and say, give me the paperwork. And she'd have county clerks and everybody shaking in their boots. Okay, here it is. Everybody's so glad to comply. Well, this is what the IRS does. They work for the banks, and they are operated with the authority of the courts. And all three, that little triad there, they're all corrupt. It's all a huge racketeering scheme by the IMF, by the UN, by the Vatican, and this, for this very reason alone, is why the Chinese have had enough. Let me tell you a little Chinese story. when the Chinese wanted to get their gold back from the United States Treasury, the Treasury said, "Oh yeah, we'll get your gold back. Just give us the dollars back." And there was an exchange. The Chinese get all this gold back home, only to find it was gold-colored lead, or what was it?
Tungsten.
Tungsten. Thank you very much.
Has a very close to the same specific gravity of gold. It's in the 16, I think, range, and gold is 18.9 or thereabouts.
Now, how pissed do you think the Chinese were?
Very.
To take down the system.
They stole the plans to the F-21. That's how pissed they were. That's a fact.
I don't doubt that at all. So
let's not pretend that they're not all in bed together. Clinton gave them high level. When I say high level, I mean I'm not even allowed to tell you the kind of classification that those plans were that Bill Clinton gave to the Chinese, just like he gave them a base on our California soil. Right. So this is not just tit for tat anger stuff. This is all orchestrated.
Of course it is, but not between the Chinese and the Federal Reserve and the Rothschilds. The Chinese don't like the Rothschilds. They don't like them at all. And the Russians don't like the Rothschilds. So what we have here, what we may have World War III, and it will be between the U.S. America Corporation and China, or the U.S. America Corporation Inc. against Russia. You know, this cabal, this cartel is not going to give up easy.
Yeah, somebody's going to have too much to drink one day and press the wrong button.
I believe so. It could happen.
That's usually how it's gone down. And
but I tell you what, folks, while I'm standing, I'm going to stand up and fight for you guys. I'm going to stand up and fight for my country that I thought I was fighting for when I went to Vietnam.
We're really just defending ourselves.
And we are defending ourselves. Darn right we are. And there's a lot of good folks that stand behind us. The Joint Chiefs, I'm sure, stand behind us. Look who X'd them. The corporation got rid of several thousand generals and admirals and upper-ranked people because they weren't going along with the flow. Yet those people are still commandeered by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, aren't they? And they all took the same oath. And these are all men like you and I. Men and women, pardon me, like you and I. So we have something to look forward to. And, of course, I resist getting into the fear-mongering, and I know it's out there, and I see it, but it's a psyop, to put more fear and more dread into the American people than is really there. It's just another fiction. We need to address the facts and be able to put the facts and figures together to make logical common sense out of it. And quite frankly, I don't see any other rationale for having Jade Helm than for these people standing up and protecting us. There's another little sidebar here, if I could, about Jade Helm. And I believe it was Gloria who introduced it, I'm not sure. But given what I know about NASA and how quiet they've gotten here recently, and the disappearance of some of their scientists, there is every reason to believe there is an asteroid impact pending. And this has been on the increase for the last couple of years. One of my serious hobbies is meteorites and studying and all that stuff. And NASA doesn't like me very much. I've made that known. They've sent their legal dogs after me and their courts and all of that crap because I busted them on NASA along with several other people. We proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that we never went to the moon. and that they're covering up for biology that they know is in these rocks and meteorites. The whole Antarctic deal, the whole flat Earth conspiracy is very interesting. But to get back to what may prompt Jade Helm is a asteroid hit, and we think that the scientists will let us know pretty quick here in the next week or couple months about this incident. It's a big, big asteroid. They figure its trajectory will land in the Atlantic, which will wipe out the eastern seaboard and flood everything over to the Rockies. And the Jade Helm operation is merely to keep control and maintain order and to protect the interests of the people. So there's another thing to think about. Whether or not all of that is true and factual, I don't know, but there's some good supposition out there that makes me think that that's conceivable and a possibility. So I'll yield for questions.
Let's take, it's 11:46, you guys, Eastern. Let's take about 4 minutes to wrap it up. Comments, questions? Wow, Steve, I think you taught everyone everything they ever needed to know.
Or I put him to sleep. I apologize for that.
No. And by the way, Scott, you sent an email. I'm forwarding it out to the folks that need it, and I gave you the link again.
Randy.
Yes.
Can you forward me some of the stuff? I think I'm not sure if you have my right address for the
Buyers
email.
would like that as well.
Okay, ask the question again. For some reason, the echo. It's that echo.
There might have been Percy. She's very echoey. I was wondering if you could send me an email, because I don't know if you sent it to me.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you're registered in. Yeah, I'll send it to you right now.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have a question, Randy.
Yes.
Yes, Randy, this is Brian Parker over in Myers.
Sure, hey.
How are you doing? Good talking to you and listening to you. The Jade Helm seems like it could be many different things. I understand, trust, what the idea is that it could be to set things straight, but I'm really leaning more towards the idea that it is a mental conditioning as a PSYOP. Any thoughts more regarding it only being a conditioning and maybe a precursor?
Well, for people like me, it enrages me, so is that part of the conditioning? That could be. It just boils me up. Go ahead, Steve.
I would agree. We don't have to look too far for PSYOPs. I think we've had some discussions on that before. The government is, the corporation. Let's not call them our government, because they're really not. The corporate psychologists, psychiatrists, all of that. These are very tricky people, and they know what works, what doesn't. Could it be a PSYOP? Absolutely. It does have all the signatures of previous PSYOPs. Missouri, that was one. The school up in Connecticut. A few others. So, it's entirely possible. But I think if we were to take Randy's advice and others to prepare in either case, that's wisdom. That's a wise thing to do.
I might add a little bit, Steve.
Yes, go ahead.
If some are interested in PSYOPs from the RAND Corporation, and other diabolical groups. You might take a look at maybe an echo that I'm getting here from someone. I apologize.
You are unmuting it. I'm muting the line. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, www.psywarrior, P-S-Y, warrior.com/Goebbels, Goebbels, will get you a very interesting, in fact, you probably Google the name, Joseph Goebbels, although they call him Goebbels, the Nazi party leader for Hitler's propaganda minister, who came from Edwin Bernays and Hegel, or Hegel, from the Hegelian dialectic from the Tavistokian Institute, which was a spin-off of the Madame Helena, or Helena Blavatsky, or Blavatsky, as the case may be. These were the ministers of disinformation, or propaganda, indoctrination, and confusion and chaos. And number 4, which you'll find on his principles of propaganda, says that propaganda must affect the enemy's policy and action by suppressing propagandistically desirable material which can provide the enemy with useful intelligence. B, by openly disseminating propaganda whose content or tone causes the enemy to draw the desired conclusions by goading the enemy into revealing vital information about themselves, by making no reference to a desired enemy activity within any reference would discredit their activity. Declassified operational information must be available to implement the propaganda campaign, and to be perceived or believed, propaganda must evoke an interest of the audience and must be transmitted through an attention-getting communications medium. Credibility alone must determine whether propaganda output should be true or false, and the purpose or content and effectiveness of enemy propaganda, the strength and effects of the expose, the nature of the propaganda campaigns determines whether the enemy propaganda should be ignored or refused. Basically, they tell us, Stalin did, that if we tell a lie often enough, that most of the people will come to believe it. And whether Jade Helm is a good or a bad action, I can't tell you. I kind of think that the good side of it is a misinformation campaign likely to soften the ire of the public's perception of this diabolical scam to infiltrate and perhaps to insert a foreign enemy agency into particular groups of peoples they deem to be hostiles, like in Texas and Nevada and Arizona and other areas of hotbeds of conservatism and patriotism who love America. So the Boy Scouts always taught us to be prepared. And it would certainly be more propitious to be prepared to perhaps have your stocks of necessary and needful items put away in the event that something comes down. But if they tell you to get on the trains, that you're going to go for a nice ride to the residential care facilities, I think I would be telling them, thank you, but no thank you. I don't think I care to go to a death camp, a FEMA camp, even if they call it a residential care facility. Perhaps they might have some nice guillotines there. Of course, they might use them on public officials and bad actor judges and prosecutors and law bar members, or they might use them on the common people. So either way, being prepared is good advice. Be sure you have plenty of water, food, medicine, bandages, diapers, Kleenex, feminine hygiene products, perhaps some precious metals, gold, silver, lead, copper, whatever you think you need, and maybe even some other items of defensive nature. So blessed be unto you. Keep your eyes open, no fear.
That's right. Good note to end it on.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. Thank you, everyone. Steve, Chris.
Randy.
Yes, who's that?
Gloria. Steve mentioned about the space program. Actually, what I saw, there was a NASA, some technology that they're developing. It's called Orion, and they're trying to pass the Van Allen radiation belt. Which is, it starts about 1,000 miles above the space to about stretched to about 9,000 or 8,000 miles, and those areas called the Van Allen radiation belt, and nothing really passed those areas because it just crashed everything, computer system, and no one ever really passed that area. So in order to go to the moon, that area, has to be passed, but so far it seems like nothing really ever passed. And it's funny that the NASA is actually publishing that, and yet they said they went to the moon. So, you gotta be the judge.
Listen, Jim, I got a question for Steve.
Yes, please. We got 3 minutes, you guys, to wrap.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
On that ticket that I got, were you saying that I shouldn't send it in within this 3 days?
No. What we're recommending here is that you make a copy of that ticket and cross through it, say null and void. I do not consent. Within 72 hours.
Right.
And send a note or cover letter along with that, challenging them to produce their jurisdiction, along with accepting your non-consent. Get that done in 3 days, and there's really nothing they can do about it.
All right. Well, yeah, I was going to send that off tomorrow. So.
Okay, good.
With a register mail. Register mail is your contract.
You betcha. Send it certified or registered, yeah.
Right. And I just send it to the Denver department or whoever it was on the front of the ticket, right?
No, you send it to the clerk of the court. And what you'll want to do on your ticket, on the side and the border right, notice to agent is notice to principal.
Oh, okay.
And the agent is the clerk. The clerk will, he must make sure that all principals in the matter are notified.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Also, when you send it, regardless of certified or registered, there's a box that says return receipt requested, cross out requested, and write required.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
I think it's better to send it to the agency because the court is basically public court. You go into the court. You want to send it to a private agency. That's the private agency. Challenge whether you have a contract or not. Because once you go to the court, I mean, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. Just to send it behind a ticket. There is address in the back. Send it to that address.
They didn't. There's not actually an address. Everything they did was computer generated, so it just prints out with no back to the ticket. It's all just like I said, printing it right out of the computer, and on here it just has. It has.
And there's an address to send it, payment to.
A court or city and county of Denver, Colorado. And it does not have, it has summoned to appear, 520 West Colfax Avenue. It just has that building there. It's the only
That's where you would send it then. That's what I would recommend. Gloria, you have a very good suggestion. You can send it directly to the Department of Public Safety.
Okay. What if I send it to both?
Both? Yep. That's a good idea.
Okay.
And maybe you want to send a copy to your bonds person too.
You good? Did we lose him? All right. Next week, we'll see you guys. This is a wrap. Awesome call. Thank you, everyone, for all your input. Stay safe. Get prepared. And we'll see you next Thursday. Good night, everyone.